future plans now that you're done with high school?
Oh yeah, I really want to go to universities in the US, but I'm afraid of the tuition fee could be too high, which I cannot afford.
Oh, but I think it's only the private institutions that charge a very high tuition fee, George. You can still try the public universities like the University of California or Michigan. You're right, Avantika, but you know that the public colleges are also increasing their tuition fees tremendously. So the public universities actually raised their tuition fees by 8.3% in 2012, which is more than two times the inflation rate. If the cost of education, higher education, was $10,000 in 1986, it should now cost $21,500 if the cost of education was as much as the average inflation rate. But instead, it costs $59,800, which is two and a half times the inflation rate. Wow, are you serious? Yeah, so a few days back, I read this article which spoke about how higher education went from being a public good to a private good in the United States. So these public colleges educate three-fourths of the population in the US. And in the recent years, these colleges have seen a tremendous rise in their tuition fees. Some of the main reasons are providing recreation facilities to students, overstaffing, and increased wages for college presidents or chairman. But it has been found that the total spending per student has actually remained flat over the past few years. So then what is the reason? Why is there a tremendous rise in tuition fees? The reason is that the state legislature removed tuition fees from the public good items. Between the period 1987 and 2012, in real dollars, government support has declined from $8,500 to $5,900 per student. Over time, schools have turned from being a state owned to state supported and now state located colleges. This chart shows that tuition expenses have ballooned 1,225% in the 36-year period compared to 634% rise in medical costs and a 279% increase in the consumer price index. The main reason that the government has taken off tuition fees from the public good item is that it wants to cut down on its expenses, which cannot be done in the areas of public health, pensions, and prison care in the United States. So these schools have been forced to increase their tuition fees to meet their daily expenses. This graph shows that there has been a decline in state support for higher education, which has led to rise in tuition fees over the past few years.
This is indeed alarming. Can student loans come to rescue of this increase in tuition fees?
I think student loans are a part of the problem, not the solution. So the federal government is now lending the college students over $100 billion every year, which is a 56% per student increase over just the period of 10 years. Most undergraduates borrow today and leave college with an average of over $25,000 in debt. By focusing on just the blue and green sections of this graph, we can see how students and families finance their tuition they are responsible for covering. It is evident that an increasing percentage of average net tuition is being financed by loans, even though net tuition has not increased much in magnitude over recent decades. In 2000, the average student borrowed only 38% to finance their tuition, whereas over the past 3 years, these loans have grown to nearly 50% of the net tuition costs. Wow, I'm baffled at the state of higher education in the US. In fact, do you know that America was one of those countries that supported highly of higher education as a public good? In early ages, public officials, in fact, strongly believed that by encouraging and subsidizing advanced learning, the nation would foster the knowledge, creativity, dynamism, and leadership skills that would spur economic growth, technological development, and social activity. In fact, in the early 18th and 19th century, land grants were given to states for them to be able to fund higher education in public universities. Have you heard of this act called the Model Act? This act was established in 1860 that gave more than 300,000 acres of land to state senators and representatives. So they could sell these lands and gain the money to create an endowment fund which would ensure continuous cycle of funds
so that the governments can support public universities and provide higher education. Those were days in the US where more than 80% of the students went to these colleges, and they were the first of their generation to even get a higher education degree. And do you know that even the inequality was so low during those days that even a cobbler's son could become an engineer, and say a fisherman's son could go on to become a doctor. So why did these public officials focus so much on providing higher education to all sex and all of the citizens of the US? This is because they believe that public education has a very positive effect on the economy, and it does, in fact. It helps the society in so many ways that it helps to alleviate poverty. It creates job opportunities. It even helps the students to become entrepreneurs, thereby not only employing themselves, but also be able to create jobs for so many thousands of people. It helps in so many other ways, like it helps in reduction of crime. It reduces social inequality and makes people more aware about the society and the environment. So I can go on and on about the benefits that higher education as a public good could do to the society, but to sum it up, it creates more knowledgeable and responsible citizens of the society who could go on to develop the economic and financial growth of the country. So when US in the past could actually come up with such innovative ways to make public education public higher education a public good, why can't it come up with similar ways right now? I think higher education should in fact not be seen as a pure public good. As it is clearly possible to exclude people who do not pay for higher education. A pure public good is something which is non-excludable and non-rival, which means individuals cannot be excluded for use, and where use by one individual does not reduce availability to others. People who call education a public good means that there are positive externalities. Not all of the benefits accrue to the students. Society benefits when people go to college. People without college education earn more than others, but their higher earnings do not reflect the whole of their contribution. Others who work with them earn higher wages because of the added flexibility, innovation, and productivity of the labor force. Moreover, the participants and the rest of society share the benefits of higher education, so it is reasonable for the cost to be shared as well. The students don't reap the full benefits, but they do enjoy a significant fraction of it. They are likely to be socially and financially better off than their competitors who do not go to college.
Yeah, so true. I totally agree with what Zhang Shui and Avantika said. In my opinion, the reason why US government has changed their attitude towards higher education can be various. Firstly, if you compare to the past situation to present one, you will see in that age, people graduated from the universities and become civil servants and clergies immediately. It's so obvious that they can contribute by by conducting their duties. But for now, if we graduated, we have so many choices in different fields, which makes it more complicated to see whether we really benefit the society. Of course, we are. And the second reason is that because the politicians want to win the election, so they prefer those benefits which boost in the shorter period, like medical care, like giving support to those poor guys in terms of housing, mortgage. These sort of things have very short run period and can be seen immediately. However, if we put some support to higher education, the thing will be less obvious and, of course, last longer to achieve. So, in that sense, to win the election, politicians prefer to neglect the benefits of higher education. But should we really neglect higher education support? The answer definitely is not. But as we all know, government has a limited budget, so we should think some second best way to alleviate the burden for the government as well as students. For universities, maybe they can cut their unnecessary expenditures in hiring coaches in alumni houses. Instead, they can put their money in an effective way use in terms of hiring researchers and refresh their teaching facilities. And we also strongly recommend that universities um, charging tuition fees in the future instead of right now. Uh, Say for example, maybe they can have a 5% tax rate for their graduates after they get their job for the first 20 years. By using this way, the university collect their tuition fees, and students also benefit from education. Um, and in the meantime, universities could also provide online educations to cut expenditures. So to sum up, I think all of our suggestions should be implemented, and also the government could not should bear in mind our suggestions. Before the end of our presentation, I heard some good news about U.S. governments are trying to reschedule their tax sharing. Um, I hope that will be effective to put in that way.